tuberculosis and HIV.
Namaskar, madam. Madam, can you make
Tuberculosis
this
is
slide
very common
full?
in HIV infected people, and all of
Madam,
us know that. Yes.
madam, can you please make the
Hello.
slide full slide? Yes, can you make the slide full view?
Full screen.
Because now your screen is, yeah, make the slide full screen. It will be better visible
Okay.
for the
Trying.
students.
Trying.
Yeah.
Is it okay now?
Not yet.
এখানে full
You have to
screen আছে।
click the down near arrow. There is a one full screen symbol. You have to click on it. Right now your screen is divided in 3 parts. We can see your screen, but the slide is the same.
Can you hear me now? I can't do this.
Yes. Okay, you can't do
Let us
it.
start the class.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Just bear with me. Let us start the class. I'm trying my best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Please.
So few words about tuberculosis. In next 1 hour, we will discuss how the tuberculosis can infect the common people, including the HIV infected people, and how can we come to the diagnosis of tuberculosis among HIV infected people, and management of tuberculosis, and few words related to INH prophylaxis also. So we all of us know that the tuberculosis bacilli is an acid-fast bacilli. Just hold on. Okay. কি হয়ে গেল? কন্টিনিউ করো। And the tubercle bacilli come out from the patient to the air during coughing, sneezing, normal talking, and any type, that is, it comes in and out through respiration. So, and it's spread in the mode of droplet infection. And the size of the droplet is 1 to 10 micrometer in diameter, and it is suspended in the air for many hours. So tubercle bacilli, when comes out during our expedition, it is suspended in the air for many hours so that it can infect other people. And people living with HIV
Madam, your
and
slide
AIDS.
is not visible anymore. Madam, slide has disappeared.
Okay.
Yeah, please. Yeah, now it
Is
is
it
better.
now? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
please continue.
Okay. So, and one HIV infected people can spread 75,000 droplets per day when he remains untreated. And after initiation of the tuberculosis treatment, at the end of 2 weeks, it comes down to 25 bacilli, 25 droplet per through in 24 hours. So you can imagine the benefit of anti-tuberculosis drug among the patients infected with HIV. So after getting into the lungs, the infection may spread. There is bacteremia like other infection, and then after a few weeks of bacteremia, either the infection settle at the lung or it may settle in anywhere in the body. In adult and in HIV infected people, most of the infections are due to reactivation of the latent infection. Reactivation, it's not the primary infection, it's the reactivation when the immunity is compromised, when there is gradually dropping of the CD4 values, that is the gradual decrease in the cell mediated immunity, humoral immunity, there is flourishing of the opportunistic, so many opportunistic infection, and tuberculosis is the most common one which take the upper hand. So millions of TB bacilli in the lung, mainly in cavities, and I'll discuss later that the cavities are usually seen when the CD4 ranges is above 200, 300 to 500, so that there may be cavities in the lung, and gradually when the CD4 is decreasing, no new cavitary lesions you can find in the X-ray, and there is mostly the granuloma, small microgranulomas and macrogranulomas elsewhere in the body also. And I have already mentioned that one cough can release 3,000 droplets, and one sneeze can release tens of thousands of droplets. Now, TB and HIV infection, that according to 2016, incidence of tuberculosis in India is around 28 lakhs with annual death of 4.2 lakhs. And TB HIV estimated in 2016 is around 87,000, and estimated death is around 12,000 per year. Next, what I have already mentioned, that when the HIV disease is progressing, and all of you know that the WHO staging of HIV illness is divided or staged according to the CD4 value and the number of the opportunistic infections are seen in the patients. So when the CD4 value is around 300 and above, you can see the so less mycobacteremia in the patient's blood, and the gradual decreasing in the CD4 value, and the mycobacteremia is increases. Simultaneously, when the CD4 value is around 500, there may be manifestation of pulmonary tuberculosis. There may be cavitary lesions, and pulmonary tuberculosis is such as stage 3 illness in the WHO staging. And then there is gradual decreasing in CD4 value, and the extrapulmonary tuberculosis is coming more prominently. Most commonly lymph nodes and different serous cavity tuberculosis like pleural effusion, peritoneal tuberculosis, pericardial tuberculosis, TB meningitis is another dreadful condition, and disseminated tuberculosis, miliary tuberculosis are so common at the end stage of the advanced HIV illness. Now, so we have to diagnose the tuberculosis at earliest level, and according to the National Tuberculosis Elimination Program, which are going on, we started in 2017 and will continue up to 2020 to 2025. So they give more stress on early diagnosis, early screening of the tuberculosis among HIV infected patients. So give stress on 4-day symptom screening. In case of adult, they are fever, current fever, cough, night sweats, and weight loss. And in case of children, in place of weight loss, there is poor weight gain. These are the 4A's symptom screening. These are very important clinical screening of the patients suffering from HIV infection, and the screening earliest diagnosis of tuberculosis. This screening is done in every ART center, every tuberculosis unit, so that you can diagnose the tuberculosis at the earliest time. Now, in case of pulmonary tuberculosis or extrapulmonary tuberculosis, these 4 symptoms are very common. And in addition, if there is lymph node tuberculosis, then you can see the matted enlarged lymph node most commonly in the cervical region. It may be anywhere in the body. It may be in the axillary region. Sometimes the patient comes with the abdominal tuberculosis where there is pyrexia of unknown origin, weight loss, night sweat, along with the diarrhea, pain abdomen. There may be constipation due to adherent loop also. And another dreadful condition is tubercular meningitis, where the patient may comes to you with fever, sometimes altered behavior, sometimes with high neck rigidity during examination, and the signs of meningism, and may the patient comes with convulsion also, or severely comatose patient. Sometimes the patient may present with radiculopathy, weakness, gradually increasing weakness in the limbs, and sometimes they anywhere, and only convulsion, tuberculoma, even sometimes renal tuberculosis may present with increased urinary frequency. So tuberculosis, tuberculous bacilli can invade any organ of our body. So specimen. So we have to diagnose the tuberculosis. WHO and RNTCP, that is the national, and now it is called as National Tuberculosis Elimination Program, giving stress to diagnose the tuberculosis at the earliest level. So we have to diagnose the disease. For that reason, we have to collect the specimen for diagnosis. So all of us know that the gold standard of diagnosis in infectious disease is identification of organism. So we have to give stress on identification of organism. Now it is the identification at the molecular level. In case of pulmonary tuberculosis, if the patient can produce sputum, sputum obviously is the best specimen for diagnosis of tuberculosis. But in case of extrapulmonary tuberculosis, which is more common in the advanced HIV illness, then the specimen may be the other body specimen subject, or body specimen rather than sputum. In case of, but their sensitivity become low when the other body fluid like pleural, peritoneal, or CSF is sent for to diagnose the tuberculosis at the molecular level. Even blood also. In case of laryngeal tuberculosis, you can take the laryngeal swab. In case of pleural fluid, where the tubercular chance of identification of tubercle bacilli are less compared to pleural wall. The TB bacilli always prefer to lie on the pleural wall. That's why the pleural biopsy is preferable to diagnose the pleural tuberculosis in case of HIV infected patient also. In case of children who cannot cough properly, so gastric lavage may be the preferential specimen. And also in case of ICU patient, it can be used as a specimen, alternative specimen for the old age and on the ICU patient. In case of lymph node tuberculosis, you can do and aspirate the fine needle aspiration and cytology simultaneously, send the sample for to diagnose at the molecular level, and other body fluid also. So specimen is very important to diagnose the tuberculosis. And then what you should do for molecular diagnosis, you should send the sample to the CBNet laboratory, and for smear microscopy, then the collected specimen should be decontaminated and digested, separated, then you can see through the microscope. So RNTCP endorsed technologies for the diagnosis of tuberculosis in India, and there are stated serially smear microscopy for AFP, culture, and rapid diagnostic molecular test. But the WHO and RNTCP and National Tuberculosis Elimination Program are giving stress to number 3, that is the rapid diagnostic molecular test. So whenever you suspect the tuberculosis in HIV infected patient, the sample should send for NAT, that is nucleic acid amplification test, for identification of the tubercular DNA, tubercle bacilli, Mycobacterium tuberculosis DNA. And as it can detect the DNA level in the very small number, and they are amplified, and you can identify the actual tubercle bacilli in NAT test. There are different type of NAT test like CBNAT, that is most commonly used, GeneXpert, that is CBNAT, that is cartridge based nucleic acid amplification test. Another NAT test, TrueNAT, it is a chip based amplification test. Another one is the line probe assay. It is also a nucleic acid amplified PCR test, but it is a probe based NAT test. So here in this time, we are giving stress, we are giving importance to the molecular level of diagnosis of tuberculosis, which is very important and very, you can give the very early diagnosis of tuberculosis. So beauty of the CBNAT, that is cartridge-based nucleic acid amplification test, which is also commonly known as GeneXpert test, and it can identify as low as 131 bacilli per milliliter of sample. And it is a very rapid test. Within few hours, you can get the result, and it can detect the Mycobacterium TB complex. Not only the Mycobacterium TB complex is identified by the CBNAT test, but it can also detect the RPOB gene mutation, which is important to detect the RIF resistance. So simultaneously, one can detect RIF sensitivity, that is rifampicin sensitivity or rifampicin resistance, and Mycobacterium TB complex is there or not. And the another beauty is it can detect TB bacilli. Sensitivity is very high. It is 88% sensitive and 99% specific to identify the tubercular bacilli. And in case of RIF resistance, sensitivity is another important thing, that is it is 95% sensitive and 98% specific. That's why WHO and our government is, our program, elimination program, is giving importance to early diagnosis of tuberculosis through molecular level of testing, either through CBNAT or TrueNAT test. Another thing is, another I have already mentioned, that is another type of amplification test, nucleic acid amplification test, is TrueNAT test. It is chip-based real-time PCR, and it can it does not needed any laboratory like AC environment and technical expertise. You can do the TrueNAT test in the field level also. So it is very cheap and very useful to diagnose tuberculosis. Another important thing, another important test is line probe assay. I've already mentioned this is the probe-based amplified DNA detection in the specimen. It has some beauty, and it can not only identify the Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex, but also detect the resistance to first line ATD. And also nowadays it can also detect the resistance to second line ATD also. And you can detect the INH resistance through line probe assay, which is not possible in case of CBNAT. So it is the beauty of line probe assay, and you can get the result within 2 hours of testing. These are the newer diagnostic methods of tuberculosis in any body fluid sample. Most specific is sputum. Other fluid samples can also be tested for early diagnosis of tuberculosis. Now, in the sputum smear microscopy, the upper one shows the pink-colored, rod-shaped, beaded acid-fast bacilli. This is seen in your DMC, and you can see this. The lower one is the growth of Mycobacterium tuberculosis in Lawrence-Jensen media, LJ media, that is the solid media. And the type of tubercle bacilli growth in culture, it is a rough, tough, buff colony. It is dirty looking, rough, tough, and buffy colonies. So it is very important to know the nature of growth of organism in culture media also. Now, I have already mentioned that the sputum smear positivity is gradually decreasing as the HIV disease is progressing. So in case of early diagnosis of early HIV, early stage of HIV infection, not the early diagnosis of HIV, it may be either in the early stage or in the very advanced stage of the disease. But in the early HIV infection, chance of cavitary lesions are more, so the chance of sputum smear positivity become more, and chance of cavitary lesion are less, and the chance of sputum smear negativity are more in case of advanced HIV illness. So the in HIV negative people, where the chance of sputum smear positivity is around 60%, in the early HIV infection it is around 50%, and in the advanced HIV infection it is around 70%, 30%, sorry, 30%. There are the few diagnostic tests which are included in July 2021 by WHO to assist the early diagnosis of tuberculosis, especially among the HIV infected population. C-reactive protein is very important nowadays, and the high value of C-reactive protein is it is an acute phase reactant. It also helps in the assistance of diagnosis of active tuberculosis in the patient. Another important thing is a chest X-ray. Another important thing, computer-aided detection of chest X-ray, where the computer can give also the report of chest X-ray. Another important thing, test, that is the urinary LALAM, that is the lateral assay based lipoarabinomannan test in urine, which is very sensitive test among the HIV infected population, which can diagnose the active tuberculosis among the HIV infected population. It is very important test. It is now promoted by WHO to diagnose the early diagnosis of tuberculosis among HIV infected population. Few words about the newer generation GeneXpert test. In 2017, another newer generation GeneXpert test can also detect through another tubercular segment, IS6110 or IS1081. They are more sensitive and specific than GeneXpert test, and even they can detect 16 bacilli per milliliter. So specific to diagnose tuberculosis at the earliest level. So the molecular diagnosis is the best way to diagnose tuberculosis at the earliest possible way. Now, before initiation of tuberculosis treatment, we first know how the tubercle bacilli is spread from one person to another person. We already came to know that how the TB progresses in an HIV infected population, how you can diagnose the tuberculosis among HIV infected population. Now you have to give the treatment. So we have to categorize the tuberculosis in HIV infected patient. Not only in HIV infected patient, but in the general population. Now the treatment is categorized either as a new patient or the previously treated patient. So who are the new patient to diagnose for tuberculosis, and what should be the regimen to treat this patient? Any TB patient who has never had treatment for tuberculosis or has taken anti-tubercular drug for less than 1 month. This is very important. If the treatment was initiated but discontinued before 1 month after initiation of treatment, then the patient should considered as the new patient. And who was the previously treated patient? If any patient, any TB patient who has received 1 month or more anti-tubercular drug in the past is considered as previously treated patient. So it is very important to categorize the patient as newly detected tuberculosis patient and previously treated tuberculosis patient. Another way we can define the tuberculosis patient, like microbiologically confirmed tuberculosis patients, where the TB patient with biological specimen is positive for AFB or positive for MTB on culture, or through any quality assured rapid diagnostic molecular test, that is microbiologically proved tuberculosis cases. And another variety is clinically diagnosed TB cases, where there is no microbiological proof. TB is only diagnosed as per through clinician's eye, high suspicion of tuberculosis. It is very common, and the treatment should not be needed to save the life of the patient. So clinically diagnosed case where there is the TB patient who is not microbiologically confirmed but has been clinically diagnosed as active tuberculosis by the clinician on the basis of either radiological abnormality or the clinical signs, with a decision to treat the patient with a full course of antitubercular therapy. Another variety we can divide, that is pulmonary tuberculosis and extrapulmonary tuberculosis. Pulmonary tuberculosis, that is any microbiologically confirmed or clinically diagnosed case of TB involving lung parenchyma or tracheobronchial tree. Another one is extrapulmonary, that is TB involving any organ other than lung. It may be lymph node, maybe pleura, maybe joint, maybe bone, maybe meninges, maybe prostate, maybe kidney, anywhere in the body. TB can be infect any organ of the body, even skin also. It is very important. Another important thing, that is a patient with both pulmonary tuberculosis and extrapulmonary tuberculosis should be classified as a case of pulmonary tuberculosis. Another way of define tuberculosis, that is the MDR and XDR TB, that is multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. It is very important. Listen carefully. That is a tuberculosis patient whose sputum culture is positive for Mycobacterium tuberculosis, but resistance in vitro to both INH and rifampicin, with or without other antitubercular drugs based on drug susceptibility testing results from the RNTCP certified culture and DST laboratory. That is, MDR TB has resistance to both INH and rifampicin. And what is the XDR TB? When in addition to a resistance to INH and rifampicin, either there is another resistance to one of the fluoroquinolone and injectable aminoglycoside, then you can consider is as extended extensive drug resistant tuberculosis, that is XDR variety. Am I clear? Okay. Now, before starting treatment, we should think of about the success rate of our treatment. So how can we assess our success rate? So we need early sputum conversion. That is, if the patient is smear positive before initiation of treatment, we want, that is, quick turnover of the sputum smear positivity to negativity. That is high sputum conversion. High treatment success. Patient should complete the full course of treatment. That is the high treatment success. And with conversion of the sputum positivity to negativity. Simultaneously, long term, we need long term outcome. That is low relapse rate, low emergence of drug resistance. These are the beauty of short term DOTS treatment of tuberculosis nowadays. Now, daily, previously, few years back, we started to treat the patient on intermittent tuberculosis therapy, that is thrice a week regimen. But due to some complications, due to some side effects, due to low success rate, we treat the patient on daily based regimen, daily treatment therapy, because the treatment outcome is good, failure rate is less, and sputum conversion is much more, in the drug resistance is less, relapse rate is less with the daily based regimen. And another thing, that we should treat the patient with FDC, that is fixed dose combination therapy. I will discuss why the fixed dose combination therapy we want to treat the tuberculosis patient in HIV infected population. So standard first line drug, that is H stand for INH, rifampicin R, Z for pyrazinamide, and ethambutol for E. So in the initial phase, the 4 drugs should be continued for 2 months, and in the continuation phase, only pyrazinamide is withdrawn. Rifampicin, INH, and ethambutol should be in the continuation phase regimen, and it should continue at least 16 weeks, that is 4 months. 6 months regimen for all newly diagnosed and previously treated patient, and 4 drug 2 months therapy and 3 drug 4 months therapy. In some conditions, CP, that is continuation phase, may be extended up to another 3 months or up to 9 to 12 months. But in those cases, beyond 3 months or another 6 months of therapy, after 6 months of therapy, another 3 months is permitted for bone and joint tuberculosis and tubercular meningitis. If you want to extend the anti-TB regimen another for few months, then the expert's opinion is needed. And another thing, important thing you should keep in mind, that the TB anti-tubercular drug should be on as per body weight and in the weight band basis. Or you know that there are 4 weight band, and in anybody, when you start the anti-tubercular treatment, you should follow the weight band and prescribe the regimen. And if the patient lost the weight or gained the weight, you should follow the same weight band when you initiate the regimen for that patient. So when you start the anti-tubercular drug in a patient, both for new and previously treated patient, treatment regimen should be initial phase, intensive phase, 2 months, 4 drugs, and continuation phase, 4 months, 3 drug. Okay. And you should know the body weight, the dose of the drug according to the body weight. So INH, in case of adult, it is 5 milligram per kg body weight. In case of pediatric age group, it is 10 milligram per kg body weight. Rifampicin, both it is in adult, it is 10 milligram, and pediatric, it is 15 milligram, but you can give 10 milligram also. Ethambutol 15 milligram in adult, 20 milligram in pediatric age group. Pyrazinamide 25 milligram in the adult and 35 milligram per kg body weight daily in the pediatric age group. So why the fixed dose combination? Fixed dose combination therapy has potential advantage because the simplicity of treatment. Patient has to take the lower number of the pill burden, only 3 drugs, but it contains 4 drugs. So increase patient's acceptance, once a daily dose, fewer tablets to swallow, and it prevent the concealed irregularity. So, and selective drug avoidance also, so that the emergence of the drug resistance stain are also become less. Increase health worker compliance also, fewer tablet to handle, get quicker supervision of DOTS, and reduce use of monotherapy, lower risk of misuse of single drug, and lower risk of emergence of drug resistance, I have said already, and easier to adjust dosage as per body weight band. These are the beauty of FDC. But in case of pediatric age group, actually, ethambutol is very much unstable in the fixed dose combination. So you have to prescribe ethambutol in the separately. So in the adult, 4 drugs in the FDC, but in case of the pediatric age group, rifampicin, INH, and pyrazinamide, 75, 50, and 150 milligram is there. Ethambutol is dispersed in the separately because it is very unstable in the FDC. This slide says that the category 4, category 5 drugs, but nowadays in 2020 WHO revised program, they are switching to all oral therapy and try to avoid the injectable aminoglycosides. So I just mentioned this, that is the category 1 drugs. That is all the 4 drugs started in the new ATD regimen, that is INH, rifampicin, pyrazinamide, and ethambutol. And the category 4 drugs, which was previously used, injectable aminoglycoside, kanamycin is there. In India, kanamycin is there, and fluoroquinolone, levofloxacin is there, and ethionamide, cycloserine. As MDR cases are sensitive to ethambutol or pyrazinamide, resistant to INH by rifampicin. So PZA and ethambutol is there, and PAS, capreomycin, and either LiFo or moxifloxacin, both may not be needed. And category 5 drugs, these are capreomycin, paraaminosalicylic acid, high-dose moxifloxacin, high-dose INH, clofazimine, linezolid, amoxiclav, and clarithromycin. Thioacetazone is not used in PLHIV because it can cause severe skin reaction, SJS10. So it is not recommended among the in HIV infected people. It is contraindicated. In nowadays, MDR is treated with LLB and 2C. You should remember LLB is linezolid, levofloxacin, and bedaquiline. Bedaquiline is the new drug arrived in the last few years, and it is a very good drug. It is the it inhibit the, it is very active bactericidal antitubercular drug, inhibit the ATP synthetase of the mycobacteria. It is very powerful. So bedaquiline based, that is levofloxacin, linezolid, and bedaquiline, along with cycloserine and clofazimine. These are the new recommendation to treat the MDR cases, and short durations 9 to 12 months. This is coming. And in some state, it has already started. They are already started to use bedaquiline-based regimen to treat the MDR also. I have mentioned this, and I just want to escape this slide. So, few words about the adverse drug reactions and the drug-drug interaction. INH is the most important bactericidal drug in antituberculous treatment, ATD. So it is very common to cause peripheral neuropathy, and intermittent dose can cause much more hepatotoxicity. Daily dose cause peripheral neuropathy. You can treat the, and this INH induced neuropathy can be avoided with pyridoxine 10 milligram per day. Some patients may complain of lightheadedness, lethargy, fatigue, and which are more common in the intermittent dosage. INH induced hepatotoxicity is also very common, and it is reversible. If the drug is stopped, then it can be, it is reversible. Some patients may develop toxic psychosis, and rarely it can develop convulsion also. These are very rare side effects, and it has very important drug-drug interaction. So whenever we prescribe INH, see the blood level of the phenytoin, carbamazepine, because the serum concentration increases by reducing the metabolism of those drugs, and its INH absorption is also hampered by antacids. Another one is rifampicin. Rifampicin is mostly tolerated by most of the patients. Rifampicin produces some adverse effects, which are more common in intermittent regimen than the daily regimen. Sometimes it can produce severe, serious hepatotoxicity, and it is mostly cholestatic pattern of hepatotoxicity, conjugated hyperbilirubinemia, and it can cause orange discoloration of body secretion, such as urine, feces, tears, sweat. Sometimes it can cause permanent discoloration of the soft contact lens also. And rifampicin sometimes produce cutaneous syndrome with flushing and or pruritus, with or without rash, involving particularly the face and the scalp. Often it causes redness or watering of eyes also. Abdominal symptoms, syndrome like pain, nausea accompanied by vomiting, or less commonly diarrhea, is also another adverse effect of rifampicin. Flu-like syndrome is very common. Attacks of fever, chill, malaise, headache, and bone pain, very common in rifampicin use. Sometimes respiratory syndrome, it's very uncommon. And purpura, other acute hemolytic anemia, shock, renal damage, with or without impaired kidney function, though they are very rare, can be seen in during rifampicin use. I have not mentioned about the side effects of ethambutol and pyrazinamide, but I should mention that pyrazinamide can causes increase the serum concentration of uric acid, so it may precipitate gout, and it also causes GI intolerance and also very severe hepatotoxicity, and it is also reversible. If there's a grade 3 or 4 hepatotoxicity develop, with pyrazinamide use, it should be stopped. It should not be rechallenged. And ethambutol is very safe drug, but it can produce the optic neuritis and retrorental fibroplasia when it is used in pediatric age group. So these are the few important side effects of the antitubercular drugs. Now, the what about the few words about the initiation of or maintenance of antiretroviral treatments of PLHIV simultaneously with antitubercular drug? So, any type of tuberculosis, it may be pulmonary tuberculosis or extrapulmonary tuberculosis, stage 3 or 4 illness, start ATD, start ART. Start ART with the first line drug, initiate intensive phase and continuation phase, and ART should start with fixed dose available combination tenofovir, lamivudine and dolutegravir. As the rifampicin alter the dolutegravir metabolism, it increases the metabolism of dolutegravir. So the additional dose, single dolutegravir 50 milligram is needed whenever the patient is taking the rifampicin based anti-tubercular drug. And another important thing is, if the patient CD4 is less than 50, ATD and ART can be started simultaneously, and or mostly within 1 week of initiation of ATD, ART should be started with a TLD, that is tenofovir, lamivudine, dolutegravir, plus additional dose of dolutegravir at the evening time. And if the CD4 is above 50, then you should start ART within 2 to 8 weeks, not beyond that. 2 to 8 weeks of initiation of ATD. Some drug-drug interaction, we know that rifampicin is a very important drug. It is metabolized in the liver, and in the liver, drug metabolism either by the oxidation, hydrolysis, or by conjugation. So rifampicin affect the oxidation pathway, it affect the cytochrome P450 pathway, and it induces the metabolism of other drugs. So the therapeutic level of the drug decreases rapidly. Like in this slide, you can see that rifampicin increases the metabolism of protease inhibitor mostly by 80%. Except in ritonavir, it decreases the metabolism, increases the metabolism by 35%. Most of the protease inhibitor metabolism is increased by almost 80%. And in NNARTI, that is nevirapine and efavirenz, also affected by the metabolism of rifampicin induced metabolism, increased metabolism. So the blood levels are changed. So you have to supervise, and you have to add the additional dose of protease inhibitor when you treat the patient with the rifampicin based therapy. In case of these are some special situation, TB treatment in children living with HIV on the protease inhibitor, that is the lopinavir based regimen. Then super boosting of lopinavir with ritonavir is recommended in children in proportion of 1:1. If super boosting is not available or contraindicated, then triple NRTI is to be considered as the next choice. In case of pregnant women, due to nephrotoxicity and of the mother and ototoxicity of the fetus, especially due to ototoxicity of the fetus, aminoglycoside should be avoided, are contraindicated in pregnancy. And in case of integrase inhibitor, I have already mentioned that dolutegravir additional dose is needed when you treat the patient, HIV infected patient with tuberculosis with both ART and ATD. The last slide, which tells few words about the INH prophylaxis. It is very important. INH prophylaxis, why we will treat the patient with INH prophylaxis. INH, it is not the treatment, it is the prophylaxis. INH is the most effective bactericidal anti-tubercular drug and prevent the latent tuberculous bacilli to develop the active tuberculosis, and also prevent the post-exposure reinfection. So IFT has to be offered after ruling out active tuberculosis on the basis of 4S TB screening and follow-up investigations if necessary. Primary IPT regimen is for 6 months and once in a lifetime. Efficacy of IPT is enhanced with when it is co-administered with ART. And those completed standard ETD treatment, it is very important, that is, who have completed the antituberculous therapy should receive additional 6 months of INH as secondary prophylaxis. So INH prophylaxis is equally important when you treat the HIV infected population with or without tuberculosis. I think this is the last slide. If you have any question, you can tell me. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, madam, thank you. Thank you very much. Is there any questions
Thank you too.
for, yeah, is there any questions if student would like to ask? Otherwise, we can end the sessions if you don't have any questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, madam.
Thank you too.
Thank you.